You are listening to Productivity Straight Talk with your host, Amber De La Garza. Amber is a sought-after productivity coach, trainer, speaker, and writer who gives entrepreneurs the straight talk on personal productivity. No BS, fluff, or overused jargon. Just actionable strategies to get results and succeed in business. And here is your host, Amber De La Garza, the Productivity Specialist.
Welcome, and thank you for listening to Productivity Straight Talk. Today's episode 281, a roadmap for approaching tough conversations with David Wood. If you're a business owner who wants to learn effective business strategies, improve your time management, and elevate your productivity to maximize profit, reduce stress, and make time for what matters most, then you're in the right place, and I'm so glad you joined me. Today, we get to dive in and talk to David Wood. After life as a consulting actuary for Fortune 100 companies, David built the world's largest coaching business, becoming number one on Google for life coaching. He believes the tough conversations we avoid are our doorway to confidence, success, and even love in both work and life. David coaches high-performing entrepreneurs, executives, and teams, and even prison inmates, to amazing results and connection, one conversation at a time. In today's conversation with David, you will discover common tough business conversations, the 3D process that can alleviate your resistance to having tough conversations, the upside to having tough conversations, why consent is a prerequisite for having them, how taking risks can create magic in your life, pro tips for starting tough conversations, and so much more. And now let's meet our guest and get to the straight talk. Welcome to Productivity Straight Talk. David, how are you today?
I'm feeling really good. Thank you. It's a good day. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really good. And I'm looking forward to our conversation about tough conversations because it does come up so much in our businesses. I would love to just start off with why tough conversations? Why do I get to speak to you about tough conversations today?
Yeah. Well, I kind of got thrown into it. I was lucky enough to have good coaches in my life, and these coaches would keep pushing me to express myself. So if it was someone I resented, someone I hated, someone I felt frustrated by, or even just something I wanted that I was scared to ask for, the coaches would keep nudging me, well, go and ask for that, go and do that. And they'd help me get past my resistance. And I discovered them through Landmark Education. Some people may have heard about the Landmark Forum. And I was lucky enough to do that training. And I realized later on, as I was coaching, and I've been coaching now for 20-something years, I realized that that's one of the things people really struggle with. We weren't taught as kids to, most of us, I wasn't, to express ourselves. Hey, you're feeling upset by something? Tell me. You're angry about that? Tell me more about it. That didn't happen. So we learn to be quite clever about what we can say and when and to whom. But then what happens is we have all these people walking around not actually telling the truth. And also because no one gave us a roadmap or a blueprint to say, when you've got something edgy, here's how to do it. It makes sense that we want to be careful, particularly when there's a power dynamic. Maybe your husband or wife could leave you and take the kids if you confess to being unfaithful, or maybe you'd lose your job if you said the wrong thing at work. I'm here to beat the drum to say I've been fortunate enough to have had some very scary conversations, and 9 times out of 10, they go so much better than you think, particularly when you have a roadmap. They go so much better, and then life gets better, and you can get all the results you want. It might be more money, more love, more peace, sleep at night. There's a long answer to your question.
Oh, I love it. You did speak to a really good point there, which is like having a roadmap. I think so many people, as you said, don't feel prepared. And when you don't feel prepared and you start avoiding or procrastinating a conversation has to be had, it can get just bigger and bigger and bigger in your head. And it can feel like it's impossible to approach. And so, when you were speaking about not being taught how to have those types of conversations, I would agree. I wasn't taught. And I'm really aware, my husband and I have chosen to have those conversations with my son. We say all the time, use your words, speak up. What is it that you're actually trying to say? Just really trying to enforce the uncomfortableness, which can happen in a power situation. We're empowering our son to say something to his parents that maybe most kids wouldn't want to say, but we know how that will serve him, once he's an adult. So I'm really glad we get to move into this for our listeners here today, for those that, weren't taught that or haven't had a lot of practice in having hard conversations. So let's dive into what are some of the common areas in someone's life when they're a business owner that there's hard conversations that they're looking to, avoid and could use your tools to jump into.
Yeah, good. All right, let's start with the business realm. So you may have some employees or contractors who are not doing what you want. Maybe there are mistakes in their work. Maybe you've got a contractor who you have to chase up a lot and it's a real pain. You might have a client who doesn't do their homework. If I use life coaching as an example, and it doesn't feel good. It doesn't serve them. It doesn't serve you. And how do you have this conversation in a way that doesn't have them want to leave and feel ashamed? What if someone's late to meetings?
Yeah.
And you don't like it and it feels disrespectful. And then if they're late, next person's going to be late next week. And now everybody's late and it's a pain in the butt. If you're the business owner, you probably don't have to ask for a raise, but you've got to have conversations about pay. You've got to tell someone why they're going to not get a raise or why they're not going to get this project or why you have to let them go. I've coached many managers on that. So those are a few in the business realm, and business owners tend to also have lives. So we've got conversations with our partner about what we want in the relationship or don't want. We've got conversations with our kids. I've had clients say, I want to feel closer to my kids. I wish they talked to me more. What about when there's something you want to stop your kid doing because you think it would be bad for them and they might hate you for doing it. So it's endless. And I used to think, oh, well, I got this handled. I'm good now at speaking the truth and I'm fine. I still have conversations that come up in my life that are very scary and difficult to do. And our mind hides most of these conversations from us. So sometimes it doesn't occur to us as, oh, there's a tough conversation to have. No, it just occurs as I'm losing sleep, or that's a real problem I have here, or I don't like that person, or like that.
Yeah,
but really,
I could totally see that, because the word that came to me when you're saying that is like held resentment, right? You have an employee, you don't want to say something about them being late, but every time they're late, it's like, if I could just, get that under control. Or a client that breaks boundaries, calling you after hours or asking for more than what's in the contract, is that if you start avoiding it, or what you said, don't even see that conversation, it can turn into resentment, which doesn't sound very joyful at all.
Yeah. I was just scanning my life and thinking there's someone in my acting class who I'm pretty sure hates me. So that translates into an opportunity for a conversation. Now, I may or may not have it, but at least firstly recognizing, all right, this is my story. And we call this in the book, Mouse in the Room, I call this the storytelling mouse. We're telling ourselves a story. I don't know that she hates me. She might feel really uncomfortable about me, or maybe she really likes me. I don't know, but I got this story. And well, we can get it when we get into the 3D process about how to have a tough conversation. We can talk about how to decide.
Yeah. So the first step is noticing that there's a story. And then is it to challenge that story and see if it's an assumption wrong, or what? Explain more about that once we realize there's a story there.
Well, let's suppose we realize we've got a storytelling mouse, which is hard to do. See, we don't walk around going, I have a story that this is a chair I'm sitting in. We don't orient to the world like I have a story that you're a nice person, and I have a story that you have a podcast, and I have a story that I got to make more money this month or whatever. We just operate like this is the real world. This is how it is. And that's a solid chair until you sit on it and it breaks apart. Our stable assumptions are fine, except for when it comes to humans, because humans are variable and changing. And you said something to me and I'm like, oh, she hates me. And I could be completely wrong. So it's like we've got our own matrix and we don't even know it. And I think the job of personal development, one of our goals, is to wake up to the idea that we know absolutely nothing. A lot of our assumptions are fine and valid. Like, I got a story that my dog loves me. Okay, great. No need to bust that apart. But if you can, when you got a tough conversation, let's say you print off the worksheet. There's a free worksheet, and we can give it away on this call. You download the worksheet, you start filling it in. You may realize, oh, I've got a storytelling mouse. Because one of the first questions, the 3D process stands for discover, decide, if you're going to talk about it or not, and disarm the other person. And so in that first discovery process, it'll ask you, what kind of mouse have we got here? And you might say, oh, I have a storytelling mouse. I got this idea. Like, I got this idea that my neighbor upstairs is moving around a side table on her bedroom floor that has no carpet. That's my story. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's true. It could be something else that she's doing, or it could actually be the adjoining apartment and not upstairs. It's hard to kind of tell sometimes where it's coming from. But it's not until I write down the worksheet and go, oh, I have a storytelling mouse. Now that's great, because then you can go to the person and say, I have this story, I have this idea in my head, and I could be completely wrong, and I just wanted to check it out. Yeah. And see if it's true. And I find those really easy, because people are like, oh, yeah, all right, let's check it out and see if it's true. No, I don't hate you. Or, yeah, I was a bit disappointed about that, or whatever. And then you're off to the races, as we say.
Yeah, and having an honest conversation. The example that comes up for me is, like I said, an employee that's late. If you have a story around that, and your story is they're trying to disrespect me, or I feel disrespected when they're late, but you don't challenge that to find out that there's something going on that makes them human in their lives on why they're late, and it had nothing to do with you, you could just run rampant and start treating them differently.
That's right. So another example from today is I've got a couple of actors that I'm going to help with their audition rate, their submissions, and help them maybe find a way to automate that. And I've offered this, and they have rescheduled at least twice. And I'm just starting to feel like it's not my story is that it's not a priority for them. And I feel fairly confident in this, because if it was a priority for them, I figured they wouldn't be rescheduling. But I could be wrong. But then when you fill in the worksheet, you're in discovery mode first. Let's just discover. How do I feel about it? What are the feelings? Well, I don't feel respected, and I feel annoyed because I'm prioritizing the time and I'm saying no to other things so that I can meet up with them. And then they're like, oh, my agent needs to talk to me. Oh, I need new headshots. Today, you need new headshots today?
Right.
I don't like it. Right? So you start discovering, and then we get into decide, like, is this worth naming? And that's a very important process too. And I can already imagine it. Like, here's the easy thing. The easy thing would be to say, you know what? I've just gotten too busy now. I'm sorry. I just don't have the time. Right. Everyone understands that. And it's like, all right, it's not going to happen because you can't track him down. And I'll just say no for the next 5 years. And that'd be an easy way to do it.
Right. But you get to avoid the conversation. Yeah.
Yes. And I'm convinced that we lose an opportunity there. There's this line from Peanuts, the comics, that says, if the truth would destroy a thing, then that thing should be destroyed. Mm-hmm. And so I know if I say to these actors, look, I don't want to do this anymore because it doesn't feel like it's a priority to you. And so no blame, no shame. I don't want to do it. I don't want to keep scheduling stuff. I'm not willing to do it. If I say that, it might trigger some stuff in them. And they might get defensive and they might get annoyed and they might be like, oh, but they want to justify it, but I've got this busy, yeah, totally. I just don't want to keep doing it because I don't like rescheduling. Right. And then if they decide not to talk to me anymore, then perhaps that's what should happen. They should not talk to me anymore. Or they might go, wow, you're right. You're offering something really valuable here. And I have been, doing that. That's really good feedback. What if I promised and committed that I absolutely will show up? And I had a podcast host I had a tough conversation with because I'd offered a coaching session and he didn't show up for the call. And when I said what happened, he wrote back and said, oh, my bad. I've used your booking link to reschedule it for next week. And I was like, no, all I knew is I didn't like it.
Yeah.
All I knew is I didn't want to do it, but I didn't know exactly why. I just knew it didn't feel good. But when I went through the worksheet, I did feel disrespected. And the fact that he assumed that I was willing to reschedule when I didn't even know why he missed it. And is he going to show up the next time? I don't know. So I took a risk. I filled in the worksheet. I decided it was worth naming. And I created a little video and I went through the steps in the worksheet. And I said, if you don't, want to have this conversation, stop watching the video now. But if you're interested, go ahead. And I followed all the steps and he got back to me and I was like, this guy could say, you are such a pain in the ass and all I did is miss a call and I can't believe you're making such a big thing out of it. These are all my fears, right?
Right.
And he could have told people, he could have said to people in the industry, that guy's a jerk. He got back to me and he said, I have never received communication like that. And it was so honest and accurate and you're totally right. I didn't make it a priority. And he accepted my 3 requests, which were to let me know that he'd absolutely be there on the call, that he did respect my time, that he did value this call. And we not only had a great coaching call, but he said, can I play that video on my podcast? And I'm like, yeah. And then we decided we were just going to have a podcast interview around this topic and use this as a base. We went right through and broke it down and showed how when 2 humans come together and one is willing to lead by taking a risk and telling the truth, then magic can happen. And the magic we see in movies can literally happen in our day-to-day life when we just take a risk and say that thing that's been on our mind and find that the other person's a human as well and we can work it out. Doesn't mean they won't have their feelings. Right? They may have feelings and then you may have feelings in response to their feelings. But what if that's the way it's supposed to go? Instead of, oh, I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to say that. No, that's just going to be awkward.
Yeah. You know what I loved about that is that you really, I think you even said, do the work, you worked the worksheet. I mean, you gave some thought to this. And what I find is sometimes when people aren't having conversations and they're avoiding it, then it explodes from emotion that's not prepared. It's not thought out about the other person. Often you also said something about asking permission. You told him, if you don't want to continue watching this, please stop the video. So you are asking for that conversation. And the opposite of when you explode, no, you're not asking anybody if they want to be a part of this conversation. So there was a lot of positivity to that process. And it sounded like you correct me if I'm wrong. So when you get to the decide step, is that where you are deciding if it's worth moving forward or not, regardless of all the possible outcomes, because you're not in control of the outcomes of the conversation?
It is deciding if you're going to have the conversation, because not every mouse is worth naming. But I say 9 out of 10 are. And I realize we're talking about mice, but I haven't explained the premise of the book. So I should explain. It's called Mouse in the Room because the elephant is not alone. We all know about the expression addressing the elephant in the room. You see it, I see it, no one's saying anything, right? Say if I had blood on my face and just showed up here to this podcast and neither of us said anything, that'd be weird. Well, I say when you get to the level of addressing the mice in the room, which are all of the feelings and thoughts and body sensations you have that have not been named, when you get to that level, it becomes weird to not name those as well. And I want that to be our new society, that if you're not saying something that's that needs to be named, it's an integrity issue for you, and you feel a bit off about it, and you're like, okay, I have to go and talk to that person about it and just clear the air. So that's naming the mouse in the room. So you asked about decide. All right, so we've worked out what kind of mouse it is. It might be a confession mouse, a desire mouse, a toleration mouse, storytelling mouse. There are 8 different types of mice in the book. And then we work to, should we name it? And I say 9 out of 10. Yeah, maybe 8 out of 10 are worth naming. Because it's simply truth. That's what it is. And so one of the questions on the worksheet will be, what's the best possible outcome from having this conversation? And we want to get really present to that, because the mind will often hide that from us. The mind will show us all the negative stuff. But if I spoke to this classmate, or if I spoke to my child, or if I spoke to that vendor or that customer, I might get a pay rise. I might get a new client. We might just feel closer to each other and have a better working relationship. My marriage might improve. I might sleep better. Like, let's get clear on how well it could go. And that'll be motivating. And then the next question is, what could go wrong? Now, it's all there in the subconscious, which is why we haven't had the conversation yet, but let's bring it out into the light of day. They could get angry. I could get fired. I once tracked someone down and confessed to a crime, and I could have gone to prison. So, you want to get clear, like, what could happen. Some of these things have such a low risk of happening, but it's still worth naming it. And then there'll be a checkbox to say, I am willing to accept these possible negative consequences because I want the upside. I want the positive consequences. I'm willing to roll the dice. Now, if you're not, you can stop right there. I once, as an example, I invited a group of people to my birthday party because it'd be awkward to invite 4 of them and not the 5th. But I didn't really want her at my party because she tends to take up a lot of attention and a lot of space. And I wanted it to be my night. So what do? You could uninvite the person, or just what most people would do is just put up with it and tolerate it. I decided to have a conversation and reach out. But when I was going through the form, it was like, is it worth the upside? Like, she could get annoyed, she could get offended. I didn't get any business from her, so that didn't matter. She's not a close friend. So, there wasn't a lot at stake. If she said no, just me feeling awkward and her feeling awkward. But the upside was that I could feel much better at my party, and maybe we might feel closer together, having bonded around this thing that always felt in between us for me. And so I had the conversation, and it didn't. She said, let me think about it. I said, maybe we could have a signal if you start telling stories and there's a lot of attention going to you, and it becomes the Amy show, maybe I could just have a signal, like pulling the ear or whatever. And she said, let me think about it. And she thought about it and got back to me and said, it doesn't feel right for me to come, so I'm just going to not come to this one. I said, okay, great. That was the last communication that we had. And I'm fine with that, because, there wasn't a lot to lose. Now, if it's let's take another example. Let's suppose you go over to someone's house and it's messy, and you don't like that it's messy. If it really bothers you, you might do a worksheet on it. And what's the best that could happen? Might feel closer to the person, and just goes away from me as an issue. Or maybe they decide to get tidier. What's the worst that can happen? They might feel offended. It might be awkward between us. There's probably not a lot of upside in doing this one. So that one might let it go. When I risked prison, that'd be very valid to say, I'm not willing to risk prison. I have lied. If I went to, let's talk hypothetically, if I went to a country and I was going to, work on my laptop while I was there, and they said, are you going to work while you're in the country? No, sir. No, ma'am. No, vacation. Right? I don't want to open up a can of worms and get into some debate in court about whether or not this is valid, what I'm going to do. I might say no. So I'm not saying it's noble, although I do think it is, but I'm not saying it's noble to tell the truth. I think the biggest motivator is that life gets better when we tell the truth. Sometimes when I show up to podcasts, people say, how are you? And often I'm tired. I've had chronic fatigue for like 15, 20 years. Often I'm tired and I try and tell the truth. I'm feeling really tired. And that'll probably change as we get into the interview because I get energy from these interviews, but I just tell the truth. So often do I hear back, oh, me too. I wasn't going to say anything, but I didn't sleep well tonight. So now we're bonded over this common experience. And then the tiredness somehow seems to just disappear and we're having a good time.
That's great. That's great. Alrighty. So the 3Ds, we covered those. You briefly talked about the mice.
We covered the first two. We covered discover and we covered decide if you're going to name the mess.
Oh, you're right. So we have
haven't
disarm.
covered disarm. Disarm, which is what to do if you're going to have the conversation. Should we do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, great. So disarm, firstly, you ask for consent. You don't go in and say, hey, I'm pissed, we need to talk. That doesn't tend to work very well. So it's like, hey, can we have a chat and tell them the topic? And here's where you can introduce your upside, the best possible outcome from before. This is why you did the discover section. So you say, hey, if you got a few minutes, I want to talk to you about something that's been on my mind because I think we could have an even better working relationship than we have now. Or I think our meetings could run smoother. And I want to float this to you. Do you have a few minutes now? Right? So you've put in the upside, you've asked for consent, you have a few minutes now. They might say no. Okay, what about this afternoon? Way better to have this conversation when they've said yes to it. And then for bonus points, if this is really edgy for you, you could say something like, I was hesitant to bring it up because I don't want you to feel offended, or I don't want it to create, make things worse between us. But I decided I do want to because I think I want a better working relationship with you, or whatever your positive outcome is, so that they now know that you're on your edge and that this is a little vulnerable for you, and they know that you have positive intent.
I have a question with regards to asking for consent in the workplace when you are the business owner, the leader, and you know that the conversation has to be had, right? For whatever reason, misconduct and late or quality of work, do you still ask for permission for the conversation?
I think it's a wonderful thing to do. I was coaching a vice president at a big Warner Brothers, actually. And what came out of the coaching session, we realized that when he goes in to have a conversation with someone, he assumes that they're a yes because he's the boss. And I said, well, what if you gave them an option? What if you said, look, I'd like to talk to you about whatever, and here's why, the upside is now a good time. Do you have 10 minutes now? They at least have the chance to say yes, or, hey, I'm under a deadline right now. Is there any chance we could talk this afternoon? They'll probably say yes, but you've still given them the option, which I think is a nice thing to do, especially when you have the power.
Yeah.
What if you went up to your 5-year-old child and said, hey, I want to talk to you about whatever, is now a good time? Giving them that power, I'm inspired. Just the idea of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can see that.
So we've got that. And then when you do, if they say yes, share your experience. Try not to speak about this external reality that you assume we all share, right? Like, hey, look, I wanted to talk to you about your lateness to meetings. I noticed that you're late to most of the meetings or all of the meetings. All of a sudden now you're in hot water because maybe there are 2 meetings they weren't late for. And so in their mind, it's classic I think with men and women, but probably just with all humans. Someone says to me, you always do this. I go straight to, no, I don't.
Absolutely.
Right?
You don't want to speak in absolutes. Yeah. Yeah.
Don't speak in absolutes. So use I statements. So, I noticed last week, but now if you have a fact, that's different. I noticed last week you're late to the meeting, about 5 minutes. Do you remember that? If they do, now at least you got some common ground about what happened. But it might just be, it seems to me that for several of the meetings that you've been late and I wanted to chat with you about it. When that happens, I feel worried that everyone else is now going to think that it's okay for them to be late, and it'll start a cascading effect. And I don't want that. Also, I feel disrespected. I'm not saying that you are disrespecting me, right? It's really important. I'm not saying that's what you're doing. I'm letting you know this is my experience, what I feel. Now, when you speak like this, it's like a magic language because it is inarguable, cannot be argued. People might try, but I find that kind of funny. They're like, oh, but you're, as well, hang on a second. I'm just telling you my experience. These are my feelings, you know?
Right.
And if they keep going, I could be like, well, we could have another conversation about changing my feelings if you want, but you know, I think I'm allowed to feel how I feel. And I just want to let you know, you can also, and now I'm getting into pro tips, because people sometimes ask, what if the person keeps interrupting, which will often happen if there's some charge that they have on it. Pro tip, and I think this is printed on the worksheet that you can download. It says, you might even say, I might stumble over the words a bit. If you can just give me, say, 2 minutes to get it out, and then I want to hear anything you've got to say. Ninja leadership move. Now they know exactly what to do. Just listen. They know you might not have the words all right, so they're probably going to give you some space, and then you can get it out. You know, when that happens, I feel disrespected. And what I would really like, and this is where you insert your request. And this is another leadership move. You don't want to just dump your feelings on someone and just, that's a complaint. But what I would like and what I would ask for, would you be willing to get to the next 5 meetings 5 minutes early? Would you do that? I would love it. I feel good. And I think it'd send a message to the team. And I might even talk about it at the meeting and just ask everyone that we get to the meetings early so no one's late and we can rock it out, and I commit to ending on time. And then the last step of disarm is find out their mice. You don't want to just, have your tough conversation. And they're like, oh, okay, all right. Well, great. I'll see you later. No, how was it for them? And you can literally say, and I want to check in with you. I appreciate you hearing me. And I feel complete on that. How is that for you to hear that? And another pro tip, and I know I'm throwing a lot of information out here, but a pro tip, you can offer them a menu of options. How was it for you to hear that? Was it awkward? Was it weird? Are you thinking this guy's way off base? Or you're glad I brought it up, or something in between? I just give them a whole range of options. So then they go, oh, well, no, I'm a little embarrassed, about it. But I've been thinking myself, I should be on time. And it's a chronic thing. I'm late everywhere. And so now you get to find out about their mice and just really listen to that. And it might, who knows, it might keep ping-ponging back and forth in reality about what's real and what your actual emotions are.
Yeah.
Most of us aren't trained to do.
Right. And so it seems like it's a very thoughtful. One of the things you said I'd like to go dive in a little bit more is the idea of going into the conversation with a specific request or outcome. Do you find that it's kind of hard for people to articulate what it is they want when they're maybe having this conversation because they feel a certain way, right? Like it's a very emotional, and then you're asking them to identify the emotion and then go concrete. Well, what do you actually want as a result of the end of this conversation?
Exactly. A lot of us know what we don't want, but it takes being asked by a coach or a therapist or a worksheet before we go, oh, like, what could the person do that would make me happy? So I'm annoyed that they did that. What could they do that would make it right? There was someone who looked after my house and my dog recently, and I was so upset by about 10 different things that they did while they were here. And I've decided not to have a conversation about it because I don't think it's repairable. It's way beyond. It's like, this is a person, it's not repairable. I'm just going to write it off. But if I did have the conversation, the worksheet will ask you, what could be your request? And my request could be, I don't know, maybe I can't even think how they could repair
Right. Well, the request would be the thing that could be avoided. Like, I just don't want you watching my dog anymore. So
yeah,
you
that's
could
never
get
going to
that
happen.
result.
That's never going to happen. I don't think they're actually capable of what I want. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it. But it's good to at least wonder, like, what would be repair? Like, there was an ex-girlfriend that for 11 years, she wanted to have a friendship with me and I wasn't interested. And finally, in a coaching session, when I was being coached, I realized the path. The path was an apology. I wanted an apology from her. And I didn't ask for it because I know you can't demand an apology. I know that doesn't work. And my intellectual side is, she just did the best she could with what she had. But I realized that's the path. So I finally reached out and I said, if you're interested to know the path, I think I know what it would be. And it's fine if you don't. And she wrote back, yes. And I said, I think I want an apology. I know I can't demand it. I'm probably not owed one, but I'd want to know that if you had it over again, knowing the impact, I'd want you to know the impact. And so I told her the impact. And I want to know that you would do it differently if you had that information. And I got back the most heartfelt, and I did not need an apology. I'd done all my work. I got back the most heartfelt apology and I wept after 11 years. So working out what the person could do. And I got this first from Landmark Education. What is your request? And it's a great leadership move. If someone's complaining to you, customer or a staff member or whatever, I got it. Do you have a request?
That's brilliant because I think a lot of times we make assumptions that they want something. And most of the time they may just want to be heard. There isn't a request from the client that's upset specifically. They just want to hear you to hear.
Maybe they want to be, but it also has them work out, is there something they're asking for or not? I want a request. Is there something I can do differently to serve you?
Yeah.
So what is it? But sometimes we're just in complaint mode. So that's why this worksheet, it's only one page and it's very simple, but it was 2 years creating it. And it's it's basically free therapy and free leadership training every time you fill it in. And you can use it anywhere and everywhere.
Awesome. And so the worksheet specifically goes through the 3Ds. Is that correct? Okay.
Discover,
is there
decide,
anything
disarm.
after the 3Ds on that worksheet that we should know about before we close up?
No, I think I've covered a couple of the pro tips. There's another one, but I'm not going to give it away. I recommend printing off 20 copies and keeping them handy so that you're reminded. And then also, this is a great exercise, it'll take you like 60 seconds, get a piece of paper and just write down anyone in your life or from your history that you would not want to see crossing the street or that you would complain about. And just write that list, 60 seconds. And then another 60 seconds next to each person, what the issue is, like what they did or what annoyed you, whatever. And then that gives you all your opportunities, or at least the beginning of your opportunities to practice this model. And you could just circle 2 or 3 of the easy ones and fill in the worksheet and then decide in the worksheet if you're going to name it. You might fill them in and go, no, not naming any of them. Or I had someone write to me and say, I'm batting 4 for 4. I've used it 4 times in a row now, and it's been super successful each time. Even someone who teaches this, her husband started using this method and said, it has been a game changer in our relationship, and our listening has doubled in our relationship versus we just get into a fight over stuff. So the stuff works.
So what you shared with us was a very healthy structure of having hard conversations today. And I think that what we opened up with was, why do a lot of people maybe avoid hard conversations? And it might be because they don't know how to go about it. So I really appreciate these 3Ds of being, and if I just summed it up, it's structure, but it's like, how do you articulate your words in a very concise way to get exactly what you want out of the conversation while being respectful to the other person? person, is really walking this through. And I can't imagine that if it's worth having a conversation, you wouldn't want those to be the outcomes. Everybody feels respected, truth is on the table, and you're able to speak how you feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you'll sleep better.
And you'll sleep better. That's right. That's right. Awesome. Okay. So I would love for you to share with our listeners about your book, where they can find it, to go into more detail of the topics we discussed today, and then also how they can get the worksheet and reach out to you after today's.
Yeah, sure. So you can get the book on Amazon or Kindle. Go to mouseintheroom.com. You can also go straight to Amazon, but if you go to mouseintheroom.com, you can get the worksheet for free. Look in the top left. People go, wait, I didn't see it. Top left of the website, Mouse in the Room. It's not the mouse. It's just mouseintheroom.com. And so you can get the worksheet for free. And then if you're a business owner, I also want to tell you, if you have a question for me, most of the stuff on my website is all free. So you're welcome to access all the videos and use it. If there's something that didn't get answered, you can reach me at david@mouseintheroom.com. Please don't add me to your mailing list. I like to give consent for that kind of thing. But if you've got a personal question for me or a business question, I'm happy to help you. And if you want a strategy session, most people don't hire me just for tough conversations. They hire me because they want to double their revenue over the next 12 months. And while we're doing that, I work on the whole person, and tough conversations come up left, right, and center, and productivity and all that good stuff along the way. If you want a strategy session and to see if we might be a fit as coach and client, then go to mouseintheroom.com, and up the top, click on coaching, and you can apply for a free session. I don't charge for the initial session because it's how I find the right people to work with. And even if you decide not to book on my calendar, I still encourage you to click on apply for a free session, because I have a wonderful intake form which will ask probing questions about what you want to get out of the next year and what's holding you back. And I say that's worth doing. And then if you want me to review it with you, you can book and get on my calendar. And if not, just print off the form and keep that for yourself.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for having a conversation around tough conversations today. We'll make sure that we link out to all of this in the show notes so they can grab your book and the worksheet and visit your website for all those free resources. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Amber.
I have loved having you listen to this episode of Productivity Straight Talk, and I sure hope you found today's conversation to be insightful and inspiring you to go have those tough conversations. No change. Without taking action, nothing will change for you or your business. In today's conversation with David, he referenced a worksheet several times, and we are able to share that with you. So if you want to download the 3D process worksheet, you can head on over to amberdelagarza.com/281. You'll be able to download that directly from that page. You can use the worksheet to master any potentially awkward conversations in your work and in your life. Plus, receive weekly tools and tips to connect, grow, and lead with confidence. It is an opt-in on his website, but we will provide you the link to get access to that 3D worksheet. Be sure to subscribe to Productivity Straight Talk if you have not already done so. And if you would be so kind to share it with another business owner, send them a text, let them know you're thinking of them, and shoot over the link to Productivity Straight Talk and invite them to take a listen. So that's my Straight Talk for today. Until next time, have a productive week.